warning and being told that you are not an Indian citizen, not because you are committed a crime, not because you entered the country illegally, but because a tribunal has declared you to be a foreigner. Now imagine something even more serious. What if that decision was made without giving a proper opportunity to present your case, which naturally arises an important question: can someone be declared a foreigner without a fair hearing? The Supreme Court of India has now answered the question in a landmark judgment. The court made it clear that deciding whether a person is an Indian citizen or a foreigner is not an ordinary administrative process. It is a decision with life-changing consequence, and therefore it must always follow a fair, lawful and reasoned procedure. Now, why did the Supreme Court have to make this observation? This case came from Assam, where several people had been declared as foreigners by the Foreigners Tribunal. Later, the Gauhati High Court also upheld this decision. The main reason of upholding or the court decision was a simple one. The court said the individual had not appeared before the tribunal, and therefore the tribunal decided the case as ex parte, meaning decision was taken in their absence. At the first glance, this may seem reasonable, right? If the person does not appear before a court or tribunal, should not the proceeding continue? The Supreme Court of India agreed that the proceeding can continue, but the court also said something very important. The first point, court said, even if the person does not appear, the tribunal cannot mechanically declare that person as a foreigner. Instead, the court said it must carefully examine the evidence placed before it. Second, it must ensure that the proper notice was actually served. Third, it must verify whether the main grounds of the case were commuted to the person. And finally, the Supreme Court of India said that it must record clear reason explaining why they reached its conclusion. In other words, the Supreme Court of India said that absence of the person cannot automatically become the proof that that person is a foreigner. The Supreme Court of India observed that a declaration of foreigner status carries very serious consequence. The court said a person may be detained, he or she may be deported, family may be separated. In some cases, the individual may even become the stateless without citizenship in any country. That is precisely why the court insisted that such decision cannot be taken a mechanical or one-sided manner. Other important issue before the court related to the burden of proof. Under the section 9 of the Foreigners Act of 1946, the burden lies on the person concerned to prove that he or she is not a foreigner. Does that mean the tribunal can simply accept whatever the government says? The Supreme Court of India answered as no. The court clarified that although the burden of proof is on the individual, the tribunal still has the constitutional duty to conduct a proper judicial inquiry. It cannot simply rely on assumptions, or they simply cannot pass orders without examining the valuable evidence. The Supreme Court of India also reminded us of an important constitutional principle that many people believe that fundamental rights belongs only to the Indian citizen. That is not entirely true. The Supreme Court of India pointed out that Article 40, which guarantees equality before law, and Article 21, which protect the life and personal liberty, that extend even to the foreigners. In other words, whether a person is ultimately found to be an Indian citizen or a foreigner, the process of itself must always be a fair, reasonable and free from arbitrariness. Keeping these principles in mind, the Supreme Court of India set aside the 27 judgments of Gauhati High Court and the corresponding opinion of Foreigners Tribunal. The case has now been sent back to the respective tribunal for fresh adjudication. The court directed that tribunal must independently examine the evidence again and complete the proceeding as far as possible within 6 months. Until then, the court also ordered that no coercive action such as detention, deportation and should be taken against the appellates. This judgment is not about the granting citizenship to anyone, the Supreme Court of India itself made it absolutely clear. The judgment simply says that before someone is declared as a foreigner, the decision must be based on fair, lawful, and reasonable procedure, because citizenship is not just a legal status. It is determining a person's identity, right, family life, and future. Perhaps that is why the Supreme Court of India remains that the rule of law is not judged only by the final decision, but also by the fairness of the process through which that decision is reached. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.